All right, fam. Today we're giving you a lesson on branding. Yeah, let's get it. This is crazy how many lives we're changing. This is my truck. It is covered in paint and very ghetto because I don't believe that you should ever buy a car with any sort of loan. I would much rather buy a car in cash, and it's also just a liability. I would much rather invest a lot more money into my business. Anyways, this is Rancho Middle School. We worked with this. We worked with this client back in March, like 8 months ago. It was well over 15,000, done by Omar. Omar is a very skilled and talented designer. So when we worked with Rancho, they wanted help with their brand identity. Brand identity is usually just something where you're choosing your logo, your colors, maybe a slogan or something like that, but it's not brand strategy, okay? One thing that we always talk about in mentorship with our students is brand strategy. Let's go walk over here. So one of the common misconceptions about brand strategy versus brand identity, and I think a lot of artists don't understand the difference between the two. A lot of artists just think in terms of a brand is a logo, it's your colors, it's your font type. Gonna mute that. And that's not what a brand is. A brand is the feeling that you transfer to your consumer. If you ever listen to Chris Do speak about this, who is one of my favorite educators in the branding space, Chris Do always talks about how your brand is how you actually make your customer feel through your processes that feels elevated and professional, but every brand can feel slightly different, right? Like Influential Walls, we have a more serious brand about us, and one thing that we always do to connect with our consumers, to create positive brand association, which is something I always talk about in a lot of my content or in a lot of my mentorship sessions, is positive brand association. How do we actually go about creating the positive brand association? Actually going out and connecting with your consumers, with your followers, right? Like if we're thinking about this from an artist standpoint, you have followers that are maybe other artists or maybe potential collectors. You can always just message them and say, hey, thanks so much for the follow. I see that you're based here in Orange County. Thanks for connecting. Or even something like, hey, like what we do with our following is we message a lot of the artists that follow us. We take a look at their work and then we compliment them on their work or on something that they're working on. That goes a tremendous way for positive brand association. So when you're building a brand, we're thinking about who our consumers are, how we actually want to make them feel, and ways that we can actually deliver a better product through our brand. And the better the product is, the more positive brand association that we have, right? So different ways that we could elevate our brand could be, one, working within a niche. I talk about this all the time. When you work within a niche, you're able to actually bond with that consumer, get to know that consumer, and that will show you what other consumers in that niche are like, right? So if we're working in a niche, we're able to actually kind of figure out the overarching problem that a lot of those consumers within that niche are experiencing, and ways that we can position our art to actually solve that problem, which is huge, right? Because once you can start positioning your work to actually fulfill a need, to solve a problem, then you can charge a lot more for it. Like, for example, when we do work here with schools, one thing that we do is we always provide an educational component with our mural, right? So the educational component could be a workshop, it could be an assembly, it could be a career day, something like that. In the same vein, you could do this. An example I use all the time is like if you were passionate about basketball. Well, what if you painted a basketball court for a local youth organization, or maybe you did like a basketball workshop, or maybe you even painted a basketball, designed a jersey. These are ways that we start relating to a niche and building a brand that's really recognized within one space. And it's a huge reason why Influential Walls has been able to get to where we are now, because schools recognize us for what we do. And it's why we've worked with so many schools across California. One thing that I talk about a lot in mentorship or in content in general is tell a story, tell it often, and tell it more creatively. And the way that you shoot your content, the way that you write in your captions, um, even the angles that we decide to get, this all plays a huge role into the sort of brand that you build, because you're visually storytelling, right? When you're writing or speaking, you're telling a story via audio. So branding is really about how you tell your stories and how often you tell your story. The more often you tell your story, the more people are going to start recognizing your brand. But when people think about our brand, they're always thinking about like, these are the guys that sell expensive murals, work with cool artists, and they teach other artists how to make money, right? And so we do that through all sorts of different storytelling. We do that in closing the deals, obviously. But simply put, basically, what we do is we tell a story, we tell it creatively, and we tell it often, right? We're telling the same story over and over, but we tell it in a different way. Yeah, guys, that's today's lesson in branding and niching. I think there's a lot of benefit to niching your audience, just making a very strong message specifically called to that audience. I think too many artists are in this mindset that you just get a deal after closed deal after closed deal, and it's just like a little bit of money from a dentist, and then a little bit of money from a bakery, and then a little bit of money from whatever, a basketball company. I think it's really important that you base your future and your brand on things that you genuinely care about. And that for me has been actually teaching artists, right? And helping them grow their business. So we've done that. We've brought that to schools, we've brought that to the general market in terms of teaching adult artists how to actually grow their business. And maybe you're passionate about something else. You should be passionate about something else. Every artist brand should stand for something different. It could have totally different feeling, like we're bold and serious, but you could have a very playful, like whimsical brand. And maybe you're more passionate about, say like conservation, right? Like I have a mentee who's super, super passionate about conservation and wildlife, and we've helped her build her pitch deck to where it reflects that, right? Like everything is about that idea. The sort of clients that we're targeting are the clients that would want something that is reflective of that, right? Maybe like a recycling company, maybe a vegan company. These are places and companies that her brand could more readily associate with. Whereas, I don't want her just pitching to, say a chicken farm. Like that's not gonna do her very good if she's talking here about conservation, right? So as far as how to actually build an impactful brand for yourself as an artist, think about some ideas that you're really, really passionate about. Things like even outside of art, and incorporate that into how you target people and the sort of message and story that you tell over and over and over, more creatively and telling it better every time you tell it. Just always try to tell it better. And don't stop telling your story, guys. I think it's really important. Tell your story, tell it often, and tell it creatively. All right, peace.